Hi, everyone. I'm Pastor Joy, and I am so glad to have you with us for this year's Women's Conference, Who Told You? Last summer, I traveled to the Wild Goose Festival for the first time. It's a sort of Woodstock Bonnaroo for progressive Christians held in Hot Springs, North Carolina. My friend Mary and I camped in a tent and attended lots and lots of breakout sessions and talks during the day, starting and ending each day together with a big crowd, listening to the musicians and well known public theologians on the big stage. Are there really well known public theologians, you might be asking? Why, yes, there are. You are hearing them all here in the third annual I Am Her Women's Conference. Works in progress. Well, anyway, one of the speakers there was Stan Mitchell, a minister from Middle Tennessee. He was speaking on Genesis, presenting an alternative understanding of God's traditionally understood curse on humans. He told a story about walking past his daughter's bedroom one night. She was standing in front of the mirror with a concerned look on her face. "Daddy," the little girl asked, "am I fat?" You can feel it, can't you? That sick feeling, that moment when a child's belief that anything can be possible for herself is shattered and replaced with a lie, a horrible lie that has to do with unrealistic expectations about appearance and behavior. Who told you? Who told you you were fat? Her dad desperately pleaded in a mixture of anger and grief, as if somehow knowing the answer could help him stuff it all back in the box. But there's no stuffing after that question has been introduced. It's there, and nothing is the same. Whether or not you have kids, you've probably seen kids, little naked kids running around without a diaper, laughing and joyful and free. Kids in the bathtub, filling up cups with water and pouring them all over their bodies. Sudsing up shampoo and making spiky hairdos and saying, "Look at me, look at me." And then, at some point, they say, "Don't look at me. Don't look at me. Don't look at my stomach. It's fat. Don't look at me. I'm ugly." And some of us are still saying those words. Adam and Eve were naked, and they were hiding from God. Hiding. They'd never done that before. Afraid God would see them naked. But God is seeking them. Who told you you were naked? Can you hear that crushed, anguished question? Who told you? All the ignorance of something called shame, gone. God's creation is different now and will never be the same. So, God makes clothes for them, Stan Mitchell says, in order to accommodate to their sense of shame, to make them more comfortable. Imagine that. The act of a loving parent trying to decrease the distance between creator and created. And then we continue to see that throughout the stories we have of God's interaction with us. Who told you? All the times we have minimized ourselves because of some notion we were sold. I brought the idea to Tammy for this year's conference. Who told us indeed? Our lives are full of lies and the lying liars who tell them. So many of us allow our paths to be made for us by those things people tell us, even things the church tells us, that make us trapped, that make us even yearn after that path, the path that leads to not enough. And having arrived at not enough, we try all sorts of wrong things to find peace. How do we do the hard work of finding the truth for ourselves? How do we trust that which has been used against us? Can we look to our sacred texts for something more than messages that tell us you're too weak, you're too female, you're too powerless, all the while lifting up that perfect woman who can find her that will never be used to describe us until our funerals? We can, and we should. It is difficult. It means trusting teachers others tell us are false teachers. It means questioning the truths we're handed with everything in us. It means realizing that one thing we hear from a source might be true, and another something tied to a system of lies and oppression for us. It means breaking out of the binary patterns that keep us in our place. What do I mean by this? When we are little children, we read board books that teach us up and down, in and out, good and bad, fat and thin, big and small, full and empty. And yet, there's so much in between. We also are surrounded as small children by all sorts of gender stereotypes. Girls care for babies, boys play with trucks, girls cook in the kitchen, boys build with Legos. And the ones who don't fit know they don't fit. And they feel more and more pressure to conform. If they don't conform, they crack. Think about it. Proud parents tell their precious girl child from the moment she is born that she can do anything she wants in this life. But then they surround her with pink baby dolls and kitchen sets and easy-bake ovens. Do they think she's going to be a construction project manager? It's true, we do an awful lot of forming of our children. And yet there is something true and wild inside of them. A compass that points in a direction heretofore undiscovered, to a place that is home and yet completely unrecognizable. And this results in a feeling we know all too well: dissatisfaction. Who told you you had to be satisfied? Who told you this was all there is? Who told you to get in your lane and stop dreaming other visions? Who told you you were naked and you hid your beauty in the bushes? It's time to get out of the bushes. Get out of the bushes. I think we have to think back in our lives to a time before we started believing lies about ourselves that made us feel small or wrong or not enough. Back to a time before we felt that we should be ashamed of our beautiful bodies. Back to a time before we felt we were too much and needed to stuff ourselves down into little places and spaces so we could fit into the cramped but convenient places people told us we could go. There are a lot of practitioners who can help you with this work of authenticity and vulnerability and transformation. One person I follow is Glennon Doyle. Her life has been a real hot mess, and she shares it all. Her latest book, Untamed, names this discovery of the truth that is within us, despite the conditioning we receive and live under. She has touched on it and danced around it in earlier writings, but in Untamed, we see her finally lift up the quest above everything else. The painful work of discerning just who you are and what you are about every single day above everything else. She says at one point, in another life, maybe I would do such and such, as if I had more than one life to live. Have you ever said those words? In another life, in another life, I would not have done. In a parallel universe, I'm pursuing my dreams. I'm self-actualized. I know what I want and I do it. I have a purpose. In that other life we do not have. I don't know about you, but sometimes I'm aware of a power inside me. And it's scary. I think, what if this power gets loose? What will happen? Glennon Doyle calls it discovering her wild. She says, I began building the kind of life a woman is supposed to build. I became a good wife, mother, daughter, Christian, citizen, writer, woman. But while I made school lunches, wrote memoirs, rushed through airports, made small talk with neighbors, carried on with my outer life, I felt an electric restlessness buzzing inside me. It was like constant thunder rolling right there beneath my skin. A thunder made of joy and pain and rage and longing and love too deep, scalding and tender for this world. It felt like hot water simmering, always threatening to boil. I was afraid of what was inside me. It felt powerful enough to destroy every bit of the lovely life I'd built. Like how I never feel safe on a balcony because what if I jump? Glennon Doyle has gotten to the place where she sees her power. She's aware of it. And the danger of its destruction is frightening. Some of us have that feeling. Some of us don't feel like we have any power at all. The world has tried its level best to conform us to ways of living that prune out our sense of curiosity and imagination, our sense that we have a unique purpose. But we have to reclaim those practices and beliefs. We have to claim God's purpose and God's promise for us that we are lovingly and carefully and uniquely made in God's very own image as co-creators. What are we creating with what Mary Oliver calls our one wild and precious life? Glennon Doyle says each of us was born to bring forth something that has never existed, a way of being, a family, an idea, art, a community, something brand new. We are here to fully introduce ourselves, to impose ourselves and ideas and thoughts and dreams onto the world, leaving it changed forever by who we are and what we bring forth from our depths. So we cannot contort ourselves to fit into the visible order. We must unleash ourselves and watch the world reorder itself in front of our eyes. So we cannot contort ourselves to fit into the visible order. We must unleash ourselves and watch the world reorder itself in front of our eyes. Think of all the people who thought things that were impossible that became reality. In 1485, Leonardo da Vinci drew a plan for a flying device. Somebody said that was foolish. In 1819, Jarena Lee was preaching in the AME church. Somebody said that was not biblical for women to be preaching. A lot of somebody said a lot of things which others said You're too loud. You're too soft. You're too much. You're too liberal. You're too conservative. You're too pretty. You're too plain. You're too bookish. You're too dull. And on and on and on. God is calling you out of the bushes. God will clothe you. God will meet you where you are and accompany you as you do the hard work of peeling back all the lies, all that junk you've allowed to pile onto yourself, because God wants you to see who it is who is there inside of you so that you can be that person. I'll say goodbye with one of my favorite quotes by the mystic Howard Thurman. He said, "Don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and go do that, because what the world needs is people who have come alive." Unleash yourself. Quit quaking in those bushes. Get out and come alive.